Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar about temporary crisis accommodation support for international students in New South Wales. My name is Bijay Sapkota, and I'm the co-founder of Student Job Australia. We have with us today Peter Mackey, a great friend of international students. Peter is also the Director of International Trade, also known as Study New South Wales in New South Wales Treasury. Peter and his team advocated to ensure support for international students in New South Wales during the COVID-19 crisis, which led the New South Wales government to release $20 million fund for the support of international students' accommodation. In today's session, firstly, Peter will give a short presentation about Study New South Wales initiatives around the crisis accommodation. Then we'll have a short Q&A session, and our sessions will be live on Facebook as well. So if you have any questions, you can put your questions in the chat box. We have our founder, Student Job Australia's founder, Dinkar, assisting us with the administrative support. So if you have any questions, put it in the chat box, and Dinkar will bring that up to our attention. Let's start the session by welcoming Peter. Welcome, Peter. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much, Bijay. I really appreciate you organising this. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm just letting you know that sometimes my laptop seems to have a problem with Zoom and it goes on to mute. So if that happens, please just point to your ear and I'll unmute myself.
Sure.
Okay. So I think I have a short presentation to go through, which will be shared live on the screen. Can that be put up on the screen now?
Definitely. Dinkar ji, would you be able to share the screen? Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And you can just go to the first slide if you can. And the next slide, thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you. Just a very bit of brief background for those who aren't aware. Study New South Wales was established almost 6 years ago now. We're a very small team in comparison to a lot of the other similar bodies around the country. But we do report to an advisory board that's made up of senior people from across the industry. So we have a couple of vice chancellors. We have representatives from the private higher education provider sector. The head of English Australia, Brett Blacker, is on our advisory board. CISA is on our board, as is Department of School Education and independent schools. So we have all of the different sectors covered. And essentially our role is to support and enhance the international student experience. So with COVID, clearly there's nothing more important in terms of the student experience than the safety and well-being of students. So this package is designed to try and alleviate some of the stress and challenges caused for students who are either studying here or were actually effectively stranded here during COVID-19. So yes, about a month ago now, the state government announced a $20 million package. There was a lot of discussion around what sort of support could be provided. I know some of the other states announced, a dollar amount that students could claim to help them during this time. In New South Wales, we decided not to go down that pathway for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the sheer volume of students here in New South Wales, with the amount of money that we could get, it would only be a very small amount of money that we would be able to provide to students. Secondly, it was very hard to work out who was eligible for that. If only a certain amount of students were eligible for it, who do you give that money to and who doesn't get that money? And just the administrative burden of rolling that out was a real challenge. So after consulting with in New South Wales, we offer a free legal service to international students. And after discussing with them, it became apparent that even though evictions were illegal, there were a lot of students who were finding themselves in very desperate situations in relation to their accommodation. And that is a problem, obviously, for the students. Back on? Yep, okay. Because we didn't want students to be out living in dangerously overcrowded situations. So the decision was made to announce a package that had at its heart the crisis accommodation scheme. So, and really, there's no more greater human right than having access to shelter. So what we've tried to do is establish a scheme that will give students who are in a vulnerable situation access to accommodation for up to 3 months. Now, I should note here that this is really a partnership with accommodation providers, and they are being incredibly generous by providing their accommodation. Some of them not, even covering their costs to support this program for 3 months. We launched the scheme about 2 weeks ago. It took quite a long time to bring partners on board and then work out an eligibility criteria. We've established an agreement with Service New South Wales, who will administer all of the applications. So I'll just go through what the eligibility is, BJ. So firstly, you have to be an international student, and there's a little bit of flexibility there in terms of visa classes, and I can talk about that a little bit later. You have to have lost or be at risk of losing access to a secure accommodation. And you have to have less than $1,500 savings in your account, and you have to have explored. Should be back on now. You should have to have exhausted all other avenues of support. So the process for applying is completely online. The link is available there. You go to My Service New South Wales to either set up your account or log in if you already have an account, and you complete your online application. You can see what you need there in terms of evidencing. So you need to have either, if you don't have a local driver's license, you need to have a passport or confirmation of enrolment, and you need to provide some bank statements. The key one too is a letter of support from education providers. The reason we've done this is there's 2 reasons for this. One is the accommodation providers, as part of our agreement with them, need to work with the student about a long-term plan about what will happen to the student after 3 months. So we don't want people to end up on the street after 3 months. We want planning, and so that's going to involve engagement with the institution. But the other reason is because we have required the accommodation providers to waive the normal requirement for the student to provide a bond, because we know students in the vulnerable situation won't have money to be able to put up a bond. So you don't have to do that, but they need to have some sort of contact at the institution, if there's some sort of issues with the accommodation. So that's why we've done that. And that's what we're finding is taking a little bit of time for students to get. We have sent that out to all. Okay, back on now? Yep. We've sent that letter of support template out to all CRICOS providers in New South Wales, and we've also sent it to all of the peak bodies. So there's just sorry about this. Sorry. Yeah, so that's a simple form that should be able to be provided, fairly in a fairly straightforward way. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? In addition to the accommodation support package, I just wanted to advise that we've put some additional resources into legal advice. So we've provided an additional solicitor to the Redfern Legal Centre to offer the International Student Legal Service for 6 months. We've also provided the My Legal Mate app for free for 50,000 students to download. And we've also created a New South Wales Government hotline on Service New South Wales, so students can ring and find out about what other additional support services they're able to access. And all of the information about all the different support services are available on our International Student Welfare Hub, which is linked there as well. Okay, next slide, please. So some of the examples of the additional support that students can tap into, the New South Wales Government announced an additional $123 million about a month ago for additional support measures. What we've done is Study New South Wales has been able to ensure that international students also have access to these additional support services. So there is mental health wellness support available. through the New South Wales government. That's a $73 million package. There's emergency food relief available, and we've been rolling out additional food packages with Food Bank over the last couple of months and with Oz Harvest. Students who are struggling to pay energy bills can apply through the Energy Accounts Payment Help Scheme, and there's a bunch of other COVID-related costs that are covered by New South Wales Health. So you can find information about that by dialing that International Student Hotline or by Thank you. Next slide, please. And here's how you can stay connected and to be updated on what's going on. So I might pause there, BJ, hand over to you because I know there's some questions that we've got. I think you're on mute, BJ.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Peter, for letting me know. Otherwise, I'd be speaking the whole session and people wouldn't hear me. All right, the first question I have, Peter, is obviously as an international student myself, I'm extremely delighted that this support is available, and thank you to you and your team. The first question I have is, will these funds be transferred to the homestay provider? So students won't necessarily get the funds in their bank account, but it'll be transferred to the homestay.
Yeah, it'll be transferred. So we have, at the moment, we have about, I think it's about 8 or 10 partners. Some of those are purpose-built student accommodation providers in the Sydney CBD.
Yep.
Sorry about that. So I was just saying we have about, I think it's 8 or 10 service providers.
Yep.
Some of them are purpose-built student accommodation providers in Sydney CBD or regional areas, or they're homestay providers. And yes, you're right, the student doesn't need to do anything. Yep. They simply apply if they're eligible. They are provided with an accommodation provider the closest to where they are currently, that's best for them in terms of their proximity to their institution or where they're currently living.
Yep.
And they don't need to pay anything. So the accommodation providers invoice us directly, so the student doesn't have to receive any money or pay the accommodation providers.
Yep. And now, just to make clear, these funds will be provided for a period of, this accommodation support will be provided for a period of 3 to 5 months, isn't it?
Yeah, so we have an initial 3 months, and we can go back to government if during, for example, that time the situation becomes worse or doesn't improve, and we can extend it for another 2 months.
Peter, one of the questions we received while people registered for the webinar was from married or students who are living together. So let's say there would be a student who is an international student, and then that student might have a partner who might be on a dependent visa. So what would be the solution in such kind of circumstances?
So we are able to support students in that situation. So if a student is the primary visa holder and they have a partner who is a secondary visa holder, or they have dependents, children, for example, we can accommodate them, and we will just place them with an appropriate accommodation provider who is able to provide suitable accommodation for that. We had one for this morning, for example,
yep.
With a family with young children. So we can look after them, and we'll be paying not only for the student, but also for their dependents.
Fantastic. The other question I had, Peter, was a lot of international students don't have tenant agreement, and they live in shared space. At the same time, they also might not work in tax, or they might not have a proper employment agreement. So for students like those, do you have any message, or is there any kind of like leniency for their application?
Yeah, BJ, thanks. And look, the bar was set quite high because we wanted to make sure we were targeting the most vulnerable students. But last week, after feedback from students and advice, we've relaxed the criteria. So you no longer have to have lost your job, and you no longer have to prove that you've been evicted. I was just saying there that we've actually relaxed the criteria over the last week in response to feedback we had from students. So you no longer need to evidence that you've lost your job, and you no longer need to evidence that you have been evicted. So you just need to tick a box to say that you are at risk of, so you're in a situation of hardship, You've obviously lost income either through loss of job or less work than you had before,
Yep.
and that you are at risk of losing access to secure ongoing accommodation. So that's just ticking a box, basically.
Okay, that's great. Actually, it's even more lenient than what we expected. So pretty much students can just be honest, and just present the case, and I guess the application will be assessed. Now, the other question that we consistently received was, if the students apply for the funds of study in New South Wales, will they be eligible to apply for the funds in their own university or in their own institutions?
So I guess our accommodation scheme doesn't conflict with any other program. So there's no, you're not ineligible because you're already receiving. I mean, the only thing is that we ask that the student gets a letter of support from their institution that says that they believe that they are eligible for this scheme. So that's the only kind of requirement.
Yep.
And part of that involves an assessment that they've exhausted all other means of support.
Perfect.
And BJ, the reason is we've got a limited amount of money, so we have to make sure we get the students who are most at risk here. That's really the key issue.
That's so true. There's one more question, Peter. What happens if the application is not accepted?
So we had, the first week it was open, you had to evidence that you'd lost your job, you had to evidence that you'd been evicted. So those students their applications were declined. Since we've changed the criteria and relaxed it, we're now, Service New South Wales is going back to those students in the backlog and say, hey, look, actually you are eligible now. All you need to do is to do this. If they don't meet the eligibility criteria, we are directing them towards what other sort of support mechanisms they might be able to have access to.
Yep. Perfect. And to the students who don't actually work, right? I mean, not all international students would work, and they would rely on their funds from the parents back home. So for the students who don't work, they're also eligible for this support, or? Yeah.
So now the employment issue is not an issue at all. It's just you still need to evidence that you've only got $1,500 or less in your account.
In your account. That's perfect. Just wanted to reiterate the statement that Peter made to all our viewers. Please disseminate this information to your international student cohort as well, that you don't.
And BJ, can I just say, we've only had about 800 applications, so we really want to get the word out. We want to accommodate thousands and thousands of students. We don't want to accommodate hundreds of students. So we want to see those applications coming through. Even if you feel that you're not sure if you meet the criteria, still apply, because the people at Service New South Wales who are assessing the applications, they have the flexibility to be able to elevate any ones that are in the grey area.
Yep.
To the state government for clarification, to make sure that we're making, we're being as flexible as possible.
Yep, perfect. I guess we've been joined by a number of student leaders in the session, and I would definitely recommend all the student leaders to also disseminate this information to your student community, and just spread the word out there and let them know that there is extreme leniency in the documentation process or the application process. So I guess there is a lot of spots available, and let's try to spread this information to as many people as we can.
There's a question there about from Ratu.
Yep.
So this isn't eligible for students outside Australia. That's correct. It's only, you have to be a current student here in New South Wales, because the idea is. Sorry, I was just saying it's designed to support people who are sort of caught up here in a situation that they weren't expecting to be in.
Yep, perfect. Thank you very much, Peter. I guess to all the student friends out there, if you've got any questions, you can post it in the inbox. Leaping, unfortunately, we can't answer a question because it's related to the Redfern Legal Centre, I believe. And
but just on that, BJ, if anyone's having trouble getting through, feel free for them to contact us. I think you can see on the contact. No, I haven't got it up there. They can contact us on the Study New South Wales website, which maybe you can disseminate through to people, and I'm happy to follow up with that.
Yep, perfect. And also, I guess, Suzanne, yes, you can ask your questions here. We'll probably take 10 more minutes, Peter, and probably if the students have got some answers, we'll answer those questions out of the chat box just straight away.
Yeah, I'll just go through some of the other ones. So let me just, so Chris has said, what is the selection criteria for which accommodation type or provider is chosen with the student? Okay, so basically it's about proximity and about the suitability of the accommodation for that student. So for example, if the student has a disability or if the student has dependents, only some of the accommodation providers can support students in that situation. So they can. So basically, and the other thing is we're trying to place the student in the most suitable geographic location. So if they're currently studying and living in, let's say Sydney University, we'll try and place them with someone who's got an accommodation that's one of the accommodation providers that's closest to Sydney University. That's the basis for that. But at the moment, the partners are either members of the Student Accommodation Association or sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. So we've got all those accommodation providers. They're either purpose-built student accommodation providers or they're homestay providers, and they've gone through a process to be selected as part of that. And actually, we need some additional beds if this thing were to grow significantly. So we're trying to get more players to come on board. Siren, can you elaborate more on the letter of support to be provided? So there is a standard template that Study New South Wales has provided to students and to accommodation providers. BJ, are you able to distribute that for us after this?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I guess we'll be forwarding all the relevant documents and also like the eligibility criteria and even this presentation slide. We can forward it to all the attendees. So rest assured, we'll send you all the relevant documentations.
Yeah, but basically the letter of support simply just says, yes, the student is a student at this provider. Yes, we agree that they should be supported. Here is the best contact for. I was just saying that the letter of support simply asks for the institution to confirm that the student is currently studying there, that they believe that they are eligible, and that they provide a contact number, contact details for someone at the institution. In answer to the question about only applicable to students in New South Wales, not out, yes, it's only New South Wales because this is a New South Wales government initiative. Next question. Okay, question, if you have more than 1,500 in your account, again, I think apply, and that's something that could be one of the grey areas where they can explain that to the assessor online about that situation, and we'll try to be as flexible as possible about that.
Yep. Yes, Peter, there's a question. I don't know. I can't see all the questions that you're reading out. I'm just quite surprised.
I'm seeing them on the chat that's coming through. So,
did you see the question from Deborah? If a student gets the letter from provider and graduates from school, complete the course a month after, should provider notify someone?
Oh, sorry. So I've got questions on both the chat and on the Q&A.
Oh, really? Okay.
So let me just finish the last two questions on the chat, and I'll come.
Okay, I got it. Okay, I saw the Q&A now. Sorry about that, Peter.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Look, Avtar, because we work for the state government in New South Wales, you'll have to talk to the South Australian government, but the South Australian government also has a scheme. I don't think in terms of accommodation, but they do have, I think they're giving out some funds to eligible students. So have a look on the South Australian, on the Study Adelaide website, and they'll be able to give you information about that. Chris has got a question about, can the student choose between homestay and purpose-built? Look, not really. We are basically providing, we're allocating you to somewhere closest to where you are. If you have a strong reason why you want to be in homestay rather than purpose-built, I think that's something you can discuss with the assessor when you're going through your application. So I think that's all of the ones currently on the chat. I'll switch now to the Q&A.
Yep.
Okay, so...
I guess there are a lot of questions, some questions that might not be extremely...
Yeah, I mean, I can't give any advice here about... There's a question there about studying for skills. That's not something I can assist with, I'm sorry. There's a question here about whether the video will be shareable. So I think it will, BJ. You're going to send around a link to this.
The video will be shared, and we'll also be sharing all the relevant links to the application or anything related to the accommodation support will be circulated via email. We'll also be sharing on our Facebook page as well. So please follow Student Job Australia in the meantime, and also our LinkedIn.
Yes, and Michael, the link was on that first page of my presentation, but as BJ said, he'll share the link with applications through that. Support also apply for students who study general English. Yes, doesn't matter what course you're studying, as long as you're a current student and you have a valid visa, you can apply. If the students are struggling with support, is there any additional support? Yes, Rita, so the plan for that is, firstly, we are hoping that we might be able to extend the scheme by an additional 2 months. So it will end up being, 5 months instead of 3 months. But we will make sure, as I said, the accommodation provider, they commit to finding a long-term plan for that student post the crisis accommodation. So that's part of their obligation, to work with you and your education institution on a long-term plan. Deborah, if a student gets a letter of support from a provider in graduate school, a month after, should provider notify someone the same student may have had a valid visa for 2 months more and extend? I'm not sure I understand that. I think, is that asking if they have completed their course?
Yeah, that might be the question, Peter.
Okay, yeah.
They have visa for 2 more months, but they've completed their course.
Yeah, okay. That's so we're asking if you go back to your previous provider and just ask them to provide that support for you. But again, please include that in your application so that we understand that situation, because we do want to capture those students who are stranded and they might be between 2 providers. So we'll be as flexible as we can about that.
And then there is another question.
So on the question to Will, the international student has just graduated last year and lost a job due to. I think if you're on one of the eligible, if you have one of the eligible visa classes which are on the website, you can apply regardless.
Yep. Perfect. Let's have a look at.
With student be eligible, they have a COE and student visa, but have taken leave from their studies. Yes, I think that's fine. Samra, to answer that question.
Yep. All right. Thank you so much, Peter. I guess you've answered almost all the questions coming out of the Q&A and also the chat box, and there's still questions coming. So you might.
Yeah, so we can hang around. That's fine. I'm in no hurry. Okay. So let me just double check I'm not in a hurry and make sure I haven't got another meeting I'm supposed to be going to. Just bear with me 1 minute.
I know that you've got a webinar at 2:30, but I guess you have had your lunch. Or
oh, that's okay. I don't really get lunch these days.
But thank you so much for the work you're doing.
No, that's okay. There's a couple more questions there. Diploma studying, yes, diploma students. Again, doesn't matter what you're studying, as long as you've got a valid visa. I have more than $1,500 in my account, but that is not my savings, but a loan from a uni. Does it affect? Look, I think just apply anyway and note that, and we'll see if we can find some flexibility, because this $1,500 thing, is proving to be problematic as well. because we realise students might have some money in there temporarily to pay fees.
Yep.
I was just saying, BJ, just make a student in that situation, please do apply anyway, and just note that in your application, and we'll try and be as flexible as we can about that.
Rogel, thank you very much for your question. I don't know if you heard Peter entirely, but even if you have $1,500 in your account, please do apply for this. Yeah, please do apply and mention that you received that $1,500 from your university as a loan, and the assessors will definitely consider that, hopefully. And we don't have too many applications, to apply as fast as you can, guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. If there's any other questions, please write your questions. Dinkarji, if you can see any questions from the social media, please type it in here as well. We'll probably hold on for the next 2 minutes, Peter. If there's no questions, then you've almost answered all the questions that I did collect, and almost all the Q&A.
So Semra's got a question about visa types. So student visa, we've also included bridging visas because we know some students are caught in between those. So look, I haven't got the visa categories in front of me, but if you go to the website, it spells out exactly what visa categories are. So in the case of accommodation services, how many students might be accommodated in a room? So we've asked the accommodation providers to try and place every student in their own room if they can. But if the student agrees to share a room, like if they're with a friend or something like that, or someone that they know, and the student agrees to that, we've said it's okay to place a student in a shared room. But again, the student has to agree to that. And obviously with the family situation or people who have partners or dependents, we've asked the accommodation providers to offer appropriate accommodation. So some sort of family room type setup, or 2 adjoining rooms, or however it sort of works out. We had one family with a baby that was very young that was accommodated last week, and I think they've placed them in a room together with the family. So there's different providers can offer different types of accommodation.
There is another question, Peter. When is the deadline for the application?
Oh, well, we're not closing them off. So we just, we've got funding, so we obviously want to place students as quickly as possible. So just, apply as soon as you can so that we can get the applications processed and get students placed as quickly as possible.
Yep, perfect. Almost all the questions have got answered, I believe. There's no additional question from the social media as well, Peter.
Well, we can, if there's any questions that come up after you send out these, BJ, if you're happy to send them on to us at Study New South Wales, we'll endeavour to come back to you with a response to those. It might be best to gather them all up into one group over a day or 2 and then send them in one group, and we can send back all of the responses to you.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Peter. So I'll probably...
Thanks, BJ, for getting the word out, because we really want to accommodate as many students as we can, and we're just trying to make it as flexible as possible. And as you can see, we've never done this before. It's a complex scheme.
Yeah.
We're trying to respond to feedback that we're getting. And I think last week, by relaxing, we had to go back to the government and said, look, this criteria that you've created is too strict. So we need to ease that. And to the credit of the government, they responded to that very quickly and agreed to that. So everyone's trying to be as flexible as possible, and we realise the most important thing here is that we look after our most vulnerable students.
That's so true. Thank you so much, Peter, and all your team members at Study New South Wales for the effort that you put in for bringing this support to international students in New South Wales. Again, as an international student myself, I'm extremely grateful, and I know there are hundreds of students out there who really want to get this support. I guess Dinkar, our founder, has just popped on in the screen. Thank you for that.
Thank you,
Dinkar.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, BJ.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys spreading the word and supporting this. And Student Job Australia, is doing a great job in getting the word out and supporting students. So thank you very much for all of your support.
Thank you so much, Peter. And before you head off, Peter, a lot of students might not, obviously you did explain about study in New South Wales, but you also have a welfare hub, right?
Yeah, so if you go to the
areas. Yep.
If you can just go forward on the slides, I think it's slide 3.
Yep. Dinkarji, would you be able to bring us the slide? Slide 3.
Sorry, 1 second.
Next one.
Next one?
Yeah.
Okay, just.
So down the bottom there, you can see that. Sorry, just back one. That's it. Down the Student Welfare Hub is on the Study New South Wales website. You can see that link there. That's got a link to all of the measures that are available, including the student accommodation scheme, but all of the other areas of support that students can get access to, whether it be mental health or emergency food relief, legal support, etc.
Yep. Thank you so much, Peter, again, for your valuable time and for all the efforts that you've put in. If you have any questions, we will send it to you via email. To all the participants, thank you so much for being so active and asking questions. If you have any questions that haven't been answered, please send us an email or just write in our social media. Oh, you can't hear me, Peter? Can you hear me, Dinkar? Can you guys hear me or no?
I can hear you now. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear before.
Okay, so to all the, was it Dinkar? Could you hear me before?
Yes, yes.
That's good. It was just you, Peter.
Oh, sorry.
To all the participants, again, thank you so much for being very participative. And if you have any questions, just shoot it through our social media. We'll send an email to all of you who have registered via Eventbrite. We've got your email address. We'll send you an email. And please do keep in touch. Any questions, do let us know. Share this word to your fellow students. You might not need the accommodation, but there could be another student who might desperately need this support. And thank you to New South Wales government and Study New South Wales.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Thanks, BJ. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Stay well.